Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maria Kelo. I'm the Director of the Institutional Development Unit at the EUA, and I will be the moderator of today's brief webinar on the EUA's Learning and Teaching Agenda. Before we really get started, I would just like to make a couple of housekeeping notes so that you know what we are going to do. This session is being recorded and we will send the link to the recording to all of you after the webinar so that you can also freely, of course, share it with other colleagues who should be also able to find it on the EUA's YouTube channel. On the also the presentations will be available then in the Cvent platform afterwards, if not already. On the right-hand side, you have different icons in your screen. On the top, the chat. Please use the chat to say hello, tell us where you're from, give feedback, or if you have any technical difficulties, you can also ask about those there. Then specifically questions to the audience, to the speakers, excuse me, please submit them to the Q&A section. So we will then pick them up from there and make sure that as many as possible will be addressed when we get to that point in the webinar. And we will also have an audience poll at some point, and that should pop up automatically on your screen. So that should all happen quite easily. So please participate, although you cannot speak in this webinar, but please do take use of the chat and the Q&A as much as you wish. So this webinar, EUA has just very recently published its first ever Learning and Teaching Agenda, which is kind of a multi-annual framework for EUA's activities in the area of learning and teaching. But you will hear, and this webinar is really dedicated to understanding better what this agenda is about, why it was created, who is it for, and what type of activities we will carry out in the coming years as consequence of establishing and adopting this agenda. So you will hear some EUA staff in the process, as well as the steering committee, selection of steering committee members who were involved in the drafting of the agenda about how they see the future implementation of the agenda. And before we really get into the content, I would like to start with a brief video from who was then the chair of the Learning and Teaching Steering Committee until April this year, Anne Le Key, who has sent us a message about how she sees the agenda and its importance to EUA. So again, welcome everybody, and we are ready to go with the video.
The Learning and Teaching Agenda 2030 defines the topics EUA will work on in the upcoming 5 years in the field of learning and teaching. The Learning and Teaching Agenda was started by the EUA Steering Committee for Learning and Teaching, and we received consolidated input from the EUA Council and also from the Learning and Teaching community about a scope of 1 year. A 5-year time frame for the Learning and Teaching Agenda was chosen because it's tangible and it allows us to put a time scale for our activities, but at the same time we hope 2030 will not be the end, because of course the learning and teaching activities will go on after that. The Learning and Teaching Agenda is an agenda for EUA, not for its members, because EUA needs to implement it, but of course we hope it will serve as inspiration for all partners. Over the next 5 years, EUA will implement its learning and teaching activities under the umbrella of the agenda, and it will start in 2026 with the European Learning and Teaching Forum at the Catholic University of Portugal. For this event, a call for contributions will be started in June. It will be the first one whose theme will be guided by the agenda.
Thank you, Anne. Although she's not present with us today, I think it gives a good idea of what this agenda is about and a snapshot shot really into the content and the purpose of it. But to get a little bit more flesh to the bones, I would like to ask my colleague and deputy of the IDEV unit at EUA, Helene Peter-Bauer, to explain a little bit more about the agenda in detail, as she was really the key motor and driving force in the organization and coordination of the drafting of the agenda. So Helene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, my slides are coming. So let's look into them in a little bit more detail. So, thank you for joining us today, all of you who are interested in learning more about EUA's first Learning and Teaching Agenda 2030. We keep saying the first EUA Learning and Teaching Agenda, implying already that there's not an end to it, but there will be more to come. So how about we have a look into what it actually means for you, our members, for you as professionals in higher education, learning and teaching, but also a lot for us at EUA, since, as Anne already mentioned, we at EUA actually have to implement it because it's an agenda for EUA. Here you have the QR code to the Learning and Teaching Agenda in case you want to read the full document. Don't worry, you have an access to the Learning and Teaching Agenda and to this presentation through the Attendee Hub, but I will give you a little snapshot of the agenda in brief. So why did we actually decide to launch a Learning and Teaching Agenda? Why did we think this was necessary in the first place? Those of you who have been following and participating in our learning and teaching activities in the past years might know that we launched them already quite a while ago in 2017. And you will also have heard that we have it overseen by a Learning and Teaching Steering Committee, of which a few members will later on tell us what they're most looking forward to when implementing the agenda. And the overarching objective of our learning and teaching activities was always multifold. It was first and foremost to establish or work towards a parity of esteem between the university missions, meaning between the teaching mission and notably, of course, the research mission, because there is currently an imbalanced focus on the university mission in terms of how much they are valued within an academic's career, in terms of staff development, in terms also of research attention that is being paid to the different university missions. We generally also launched the activities because we wanted to support and enhance the quality and relevance of higher education provision by making it more evidence-based, by making it more relevant, by making it more transformative. And by bringing all our members together to talk about learning and teaching, we also wanted to work towards something like a European dimension on learning and teaching. You might be familiar with the key activities or key components of our learning and teaching activities. Most famously, probably our Learning and Teaching Forum, which has been happening every year in February over the past years. Maybe you have been in one of our learning and teaching thematic peer groups, which have also been happening for years already. You might also be familiar with our advocacy and policy monitoring. Learning and teaching or higher education in general is not one of the competences of the European Union, of the European Commission, but it is still something that is receiving increasing policy attention at the European level. We have most famously the Bologna process, which guides through self-commitments by the ministers a lot of the developments in learning and teaching. So there we do advocacy and policy monitoring. Of course, we also do various EUA projects. And all of this has so far been organized with an annual basis. From year to year, we always decided in the past what we would focus on next. And while this worked very well, we felt that it bears the risk of maybe missing the bigger picture, the longer strategic viewpoint on which topics we need to tackle. So we thought maybe a little bit of a restructuring on how we decide our themes would be needed. So we decided to make an EUA Learning and Teaching Agenda 2030, which is an agenda for EUA. building on EUA's existing learning and teaching activities. So in terms of the components like the forum and thematic peer groups, you will not find a big revolution, but an evolution of how the topics for these activities are decided. We also wanted to give a medium-term strategic direction to these activities by predefining thematic focus areas up until 2030, and all with the broader goal of continuing to adequately support our members in achieving their own strategic goals for the higher education provision. Now, what are actually the topics that are contained in this agenda? There are many topics and subtopics contained in the agenda, but they roughly fall within 3 overarching themes. On the one hand, we will dedicate our work in the upcoming 5 years to the quality of learning and teaching. We want to talk about the connectivity of learning and teaching and about the transformation of learning and teaching. And within these bubbles that you do see, you see at the very top also Universities Without Walls. This might be a very, very central document you're already familiar with. It was published a few years ago and defines a strategic vision of EUA for universities in 2030. So our learning and teaching agenda acts or operates within the broader vision of Universities Without Walls. So it really follows a broader strategic direction of EUA, but also based on input that our members, our learning and teaching community, has given us over the past year, based on which topics they currently find the most relevant and which topics they foresee will be or remain relevant in the immediate future. When tackling these 3 broader focus areas, which I will explain in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes, we always kept 3 different perspectives in mind. We do, of course, work for institutions. We are the European University Association, so we represent often the institutional level. But institutions are complex bodies, they're complex parts of ecosystems, so we did have to keep different perspectives on the topics we want to focus on in mind. So when defining our topics, we first thought about the individual perspective, meaning of the individual students and teachers that do need to implement the learning and the teaching. So we always thought for ourselves, quality learning and teaching. What does this mean from the individual students or teachers' perspectives? And based on this, we defined the subtopics. Of course, we also thought about the institutional perspective. So from a whole institutional, a managerial, a strategic, a leadership point of view, what does quality learning and teaching mean? What does connectivity in learning and teaching mean, etc. And similarly, societal perspective, what does the society want from higher education? What does it need from higher education? What does it expect from higher education? And then based on the answers to these questions, what does quality learning and teaching mean? What does connected learning and teaching mean? This is how we got to our subtopics. Now, looking into the 3 focus areas in a little bit more detail. Again, it all operates within the broader strategic framework of Universities Without Walls. So for defining what we mean with quality in learning and teaching, we took as a starting point the following quote from Universities Without Walls, which states that all universities will, in the future, strive for continuous improvement of their activities in all missions in order to deliver high quality in service to society. So based on this as a starting point, but also taking into account what our learning and teaching community told us was important for them currently, you know, what kept their work engaging, what topics currently kept on being discussed. We defined several subtopics under the heading quality in learning and teaching. And quality learning and teaching in the agenda is generally defined as being attuned to a changing society, as well as cutting-edge research. So what new evidence based on scholarship of teaching and learning, for example, is currently arising. Quality learning and teaching is also defined as always putting the learning needs of students front and center. So here we get to the topic of student-centered learning, and also keeps in mind that those needs might evolve as society evolves. So from an individual perspective, quality learning and teaching, equality in learning and teaching can encompass such topics such as student-centered learning, which are already mentioned, but it also means equity, diversity, and inclusion, a very important topic, especially since the pandemic in learning and teaching. Or as another example, it can also refer to the continuous professional development of teaching staff, meaning that they need to remain attuned to the learning needs of the students based on new evidence of educational research, and always putting the learning needs of students at the center. From the institutional perspective, we get to a slightly different array of subtopics of what quality in learning and teaching can mean. It encompasses such things as parity of esteem between the university missions, because quality in learning and teaching can only truly be achieved if you acknowledge that it is an important, central mission of higher education, and that you need to invest resources, staff development, funding, research into it, and you need to adequately acknowledge efforts and achievements of staff engaged in learning and teaching. It also therefore addresses the role and links between academic careers in learning and teaching. So how teaching is actually acknowledged and rewarded in academic career development. And it also encompasses leadership in learning and teaching. From a societal perspective, on the other hand, quality in learning and teaching would rather point in the direction of such important needs of society, such as for lifelong learning, flexible learning paths, but also the links between values, such as democracy values, and learning and teaching. Looking into the next topic, connectivity in learning and teaching, again, we took as a starting point universities without walls, which states that universities will continue to be cooperative and networked institutions locally, nationally, and internationally. And as such, universities continue to build bridges between countries, cultures, and sectors. So here we thought about connectivity in the broadest sense. It is about universities connecting across different missions, so connecting to different university missions, but also their disciplines and the professions. So for example, the academic sector with the employment or industrial sector, connections between staff within the institution, and of course, international connections. So from an individual staff members or students' perspective, connectivity in learning and teaching refers, for example, just to point out a few subtopics, co-creative learning experiences. So how do you connect students, get them together, make them collaborate, but also how do you bring teachers together, make them co-mentor, make them co-teach, make them exchange experiences, but also learning materials. So in this sense, it is also about the sharing of open educational resources. From the institutional perspective, connectivity in learning and teaching can mean slightly different things, such as joint educational programs, which are usually arranged at a whole institutional level, but also strategic internationalization. So which partners do you connect with, through which medium, how do you best cooperate with them? But it's also about links between learning and teaching and research, so the links between the university missions. And finally, from the societal perspective, connectivity in learning and teaching, or well-connected learning and teaching, might mean such things as education for global citizenship and societal responsibility. So how do you connect the academic sphere with what is going on with society and with societal needs? How does the academic ecosystem adequately reflect and link with societal needs? So this is what connectivity in learning and teaching is all about. And finally, we move on to transformation in learning and teaching. And again, As a starting point, we have our guidance and vision document, Universities Without Walls, which states that universities will continue to provide an open, transformative space for common knowledge production that will shape the future of a knowledge-driven society. So with this in mind, and also in mind, keeping in mind all the developments, all the crises, all the huge societal transformations that we have witnessed in the past years and are continuing to see, we thought that universities need to be in a position to quickly and comprehensively adapt to learning and teaching approaches if and as required. And they really need to have a whole institution approach to transformation, meaning transformation should concern everything from the institutional governance and strategy, institutional action plans, but also the policies, curricula, and regulations touching directly on learning and teaching, as well as more granular topics such as staff and academic careers. So looking again at the three different perspectives, some of the subtopics defined under the heading Transformation in Learning and Teaching include innovative pedagogical methods. So how do we make sure that learning and teaching is delivered in a way that is transformative and that is ready to transform itself? But we're also talking about innovative pedagogical resources and tools. From the institutional perspective, transformation in learning and teaching has more like the bigger picture in mind. So it's about institutional agility, foresight, but also change management. So both reacting to external changes, but also keeping a clear eye into the future to see what might be coming and how you can make sure that you can quickly react to it, but also how you can shape the future yourself. And finally, from the broader societal perspective, some of the subtopics that are included under the heading Transformation in Learning and Teaching include very famously the digital and green transition, which are some of the most important policy goals of the EU at the moment. So this is certainly something that learning and teaching in higher education needs to keep in mind, react and adapt to, but also proactively contribute to. These are the broad topics that are included in our learning and teaching agenda. There are many more, so I didn't want to list them all because it would be quite granular. And this is anyway a 5-year plan, so there will be plenty of time to see what we make out of the learning and teaching agenda. But if you have any questions, want to learn more about any particular topic, please enter your questions in the Q&A section. And of course, read the agenda and let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helene, for this comprehensive overview. It was quite a run through because there's a lot in there actually. And I was just thinking, yes, we just celebrated the launch of the agenda, and of course that's a big benchmark. But now actually the agenda isn't there to be an end of itself, so we now actually have to make it happen. So you know, I personally, I really like the idea of I like all the sub areas, but I think the connectivity is really something that is very close to my heart, because I sometimes feel that we work so much in silos and we think about things so separately, even the different target groups and the different types of activities, that kind of trying to break that and making sure the connections are there is super important. So yes, not yet sure how we were going to do that, but
well, it is really something that also affects a lot of how we work at EUA. So not just the topics we work on, but while we were talking with our our stakeholders, the learning and teaching community, the council, they brought up so many topics which might not be directly related to learning and teaching, so not directly related to our activities, but which obviously have a very important impact on learning and teaching, such as quality assurance, funding, careers. So for me, a big takeaway from working on the agenda was really that we need to keep an open mind, not just to to work on these connected topics, but also to work a little bit more closely with different stakeholders, but also with our own colleagues in-house.
Yes, right. Other policy areas. That's true. That's true. Which of course doesn't make it any less wide as an agenda, but I think it also helps to kind of really still work through the process, see the connection, see the importance of working together, but also then kind of the specificity that we want to address. So, what shall we do first?
Well, we have the Learning and Teaching Forum coming up.
Yeah.
So I think we will be soon announcing the topic of this Learning and Teaching Forum. And it will actually be the first activity under the new work plan, so meaning under the Learning and Teaching Agenda. It's too early to officially announce the topic, although I think we're already, pointing in a certain direction. But it will be nice to see, the first actionable and actioned subtopic of the Learning and Teaching Agenda come to fruition. So
yeah, it's nice. True. It's true. And of course, having these structures and having the different subtopics is useful so that we don't forget any of the kind of different dimensions in learning and teaching policies and activities, because it's so wide. But at the same time, of course, even if we choose one specific topic for an event or for the next thematic peer groups or what it might be, they are all connected in the end as well. So we don't want to, and we cannot actually address one topic without the others. But also, of course, what is interesting about this agenda, and I think has created also a lot of confusion, both among our members, but also within the office, isn't it, Helene, that, this is a little bit less a kind of reference document to the members. We don't actually say, members, please work specifically on these areas. It's more almost kind of an associations, our own agenda that gives us the kind of clear idea and vision for the next 5 years of priorities in the learning and teaching, which I think doesn't mean that the others can't be inspired by it, but I think that's quite specific about this agenda. Right.
It really is, and I think it's really quite important to repeat this point, which is also why we're doing it here, and Anne said it. We will not come check what universities are doing. This is not something that we put out there and now expect universities to implement it, but it is really something very self-reflective. We will always and continuously look at ourselves and at our own work just to see, are we actually following the agenda? Are we, implementing the topics that were identified by our members as relevant? But, we also need to stay flexible and say, okay, is something new happening? Do we maybe need to focus on something that is not specifically covered by the agenda, but we still need to dedicate resources to it?
Yeah, so, absolutely. It can't be a straitjacket, and that was not the purpose at all. As well. And of course, if some members will, or countries, or a combination of countries will invite us, we can also share, of course, things that have come up in the agenda. That's why we involved the steering committee in the building of the agenda, because you, Helene, and I, and we at the EUA, we could dream up a nice agenda, but we need to make sure that actually reflects the reality of the universities. I mean, really. And that's why kind of it is for us, but it is, let's say, really owned by and created by institutions or the members of the steering committee, which of course come from institutions. And then I think we also got some feedback in the Learning and Teaching Forum for this purpose. So we've really kind of consulted quite widely and has a special focus group as well. So in that sense, the topics hopefully resonate with all of you as well. Maybe not all to the same extent, but to some extent. But so if we can then kind of just launch a question to the audience, so we actually make sure that most of you are awake. It's after lunch for many of you, so you can have a look at the poll. Should be popping up on your screen. So now that you have heard also Helene's explanation of what is the richness of ideas that are behind these 3 key words: quality, connectivity, and transformation, vote your preference. What are you most interested in? Where do you put really the priority, if you think also about your own work, or where you think EUA should particularly work on? And feel free also to add comments in the chat. Why did you choose? You can say, I chose connectivity because or I chose quality because, and then we get a little bit more richness into the conversation as well. For the moment, Helene, that's quite incredible. I suppose that is a good sign. We guessed well, not guessed, but elaborated the topics well. We have quite a balanced preference there.
Yeah, although I'm slightly surprised that quality is ahead, because my bet would have been on transformation, because this is what everybody's talking about with the AI revolution and digitalization going on. So I'm honestly surprised that quality is what people seem to be most interested in.
I'm actually not so surprised, because in the end, it all comes down to that. Because I think also connectivity is in the function of quality. That's why we want connections between the different missions, and we want connections with the stakeholders and the labor market. And I think also the transformation, both transformation of the learning and teaching process, it has to be to give a better quality, and the kind of capacity of higher education to transform the individuals and transform society even around it, I think also is a kind of indicator of quality. So somehow I see that a kind of really as the pivotal point. So we've had really good responses. I think almost everybody has responded. Everybody. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for being such good listeners. So we have almost 40% quality, 27% connectivity, and 34% transformation. But the number difference is actually quite small, because there are 69 participants. So quality and transformation are almost at the par. And connection is perhaps as a topic less visible. It's probably something that indeed connects all the others. So thank you for taking part in the poll. Good. Any other things that you would like to take away from that, Helene, from the poll results?
No, I think you made quite a good point about the others ultimately working towards quality of learning and teaching, and we do write in the agenda that it is an evergreen goal. So something that you continuously work towards, that should always be there at the horizon.
Yes.
Having like a real quality culture in learning and teaching.
Good, but glad to see that there was no topic that nobody thought was very important. So we're doing okay for the moment. Thanks again, everybody. And thanks, Helene. I will now move on to the next little section we have in this webinar, which I have a pleasure of having 3 members of the EUA Learning and Teaching Steering Committee here to give their views on what they think of the agenda and what are they really looking forward to in it. So I would like to invite Philippe Ampli, Karin Axelsson, and Nora Angelova on the screen with me. All 3 of them, if possible. There they are. So hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us for this brief webinar.
Hello.
And you were all involved, so you have read the agenda backwards and right way, and from the beginning and from the end and transversely, etc. You have written many parts of it yourselves. So which of the topics in the agenda specifically are you kind of keen to work on or looking forward to taking forward in the next few years in your role also as the EUA Learning and Teaching Steering Committee members? So, Philippe, you are our male quota, gender quota, so maybe you can go first.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for the invitation to participate to this webinar. It's very pleasant and very inspiring. Of course, I will speak about transformation, but I think, as you said, that everything is connected, and it's very important to have the 3 areas in mind. For me, the transformation aspect, very important, is maybe from societal point of view, the university have to remain during the time ready to make evolution with respect to their environmental, their context, and this context is evolving very fast. And in order to be able to face technological, societal, or environmental changes, university have to be ready to be agile bodies. And I think that it has been demonstrated quite recently by looking to the answer university have developed with respect to the health-related COVID crisis, of course. So to me, adapting the activity, transforming the activity, it's teaching, but also research and advisory mission is very important to continue to be places where university contribute for shaping a knowledge-informed or knowledge-driven society. So for me, the transformation process is bi-directional. It means that society induces university transformation, but university participates to the transformation of the society.
Yeah. Yes, so it's kind of two types of transformation. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Philip. Gemma, if we could all just stay on the screen, so we have a little bit more maybe exchanges as well. Karin, what are you looking forward to? What's your, let's say, favorite topic?
Yeah, I've chosen connectivity, despite the polling results, but it was very equal as we saw. I think, as Helena told us about the content of connectivity being focusing cooperation and networking on all levels, ranging from within universities up to global connectivity. I think that's very important, and especially important in these days. So I think this is something we need to focus very much on, how to bridge cultures and countries and so on. And I would like to mention a few things that I find especially important to work on within connectivity when it comes to EUA's work. And the first one is connectivity for students, implying that we should see students as very, very powerful actors when it comes to being involved and contributing to their own education. And as some of you might know, we have this thematic peer group on empowerment of students. I think we can do more on that side, and that's very important to really see the students as parts of how we as universities can shape the future. Another one is international collaboration through joint programs and other educational activities. And of course, we already do a lot of collaboration in that sense within European universities, the Commission's European degree coming now and so. But I think we also need to do this broader than just these programs. I mean, both for economical reasons and competence reasons, but also really give the students the real international, global content in their educations as well, and also develop some kind of broader worldview. So I think these are very important aspects within connectivity.
Thank you very much. And Nora, when I introduced you, well, like everybody, I didn't go into details of your curriculum, but I think it's worth mentioning that you are an ESSU-nominated student member of the steering committee. So I don't know if you chose quality, because that would be the third one, but what do you most look forward to in working on and supporting our EUA's work of this agenda?
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and also I chose quality, yes. Actually, for me this is the most exciting topic, because I see it that in the upcoming years we have a real opportunity and also a responsibility to actually rethink what quality actually means in higher education. Because traditionally, quality assurance has often focused on processes, documents, compliance. But as we move forward to 2030, I believe quality must become much more dynamic and reflecting the rapidly changing needs of students, society, but also the labor market. So as students, we bring a unique perspective, actually, because we experience the strengths and the weaknesses of learning environments every single day. And we truly know where systems succeed at empowering us, but also where they fall short. And this is why students, I agree with what was said earlier, students should be not seen just as participants in this, but equal partners in actually shaping the curricular, the assessments, and learning environment. So finally, I look forward to contributing to a quality agenda that is dynamic, student-centered, and deeply rooted in the values of European higher education, such as excellence, equity, and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. This is a surprise question because we have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to comment, which item or which things do you think will be very challenging to address, or where kind of it might be more complicated to have some kind of a concrete impact from EUA level through our activities? Is there something? Yes, Philip.
I think that universities are large bodies and sometimes difficult to make them move towards a new solution, a new state. So I think that universities have first to be aware that they are large and they are full of different partners. As Nora said, students are partners, the personnel of the universities are partners, services as well. And it's very important to me that the evolution of university takes into account all the participants, to all the stakeholders of the university. So sometimes it takes time, often it takes time, but it's very important to have everybody on board in order to apply this change, because it's sometimes against the initial culture. You need to change mindset, and this is sometimes a bit long, but very important to take into account all the perceptions of the different stakeholders. And then you have to move to a systemic approach. So it means that if you change pedagogical methods, you have to adapt your resources and to adapt your infrastructure. And this is sometimes not done. So connectivity, as already said by Karin, is very important. Internal connectivity between the different partners of university, different stakeholders in university, services, teaching staff, learning, teaching centers, students, so on, is very important as well. It's not obvious, but it has to be taken into account.
Yeah. It almost, now that you speak about it, kind of things, almost it sounds like when implementation of learning and teaching activities perhaps requires even more people to be really involved in the process than, let's say, research collaboration, which can be maybe a more limited, because it seems like learning and teaching practice really on everybody working in the university, from the support services and libraries to, you know, obviously teachers, students, but all kind of tutors, mentors, whatever they might be. Anybody else who wants to comment on either what Philip just said or pick up another point? Karin.
I can also think about it from a connectivity aspect, and I think especially collaboration between universities is rhetorical, very easy to stand behind and think that we should do, but still we are also competing with each other in different aspects. To answer your question about what could be difficult to realize, could also be that this is two sides of the coin. We really need to work together to take steps forward and to contribute and to solve the challenges ahead of us. But then still we also are in some kind of competing position regarding students and funding and you know. So that's very important to find the balance between these two, because both sides will remain.
True, and we see in any case international cooperation is now challenged with so many things, from national politics and visa regulations to all kind of other things. So I think it is something that is kind of quite a complicated set of activities and attention and demands that can be not compatible between themselves, and sometimes the competition versus cooperation can also, while it's kind of naturally part of our life, can be also causing a little hitch. Nora, do you want to have a last word? Do you have something that you want?
Not really, thank you.
No. Okay, good. So thank you, Karin, Nora, and Philip very much for joining us and giving your ideas and perspectives on this topic. Now we will see. Please stay there because I see if there are any questions, but there aren't any. So now whoever has a question has really a prime opportunity because you will be the first ones, so your question will be taken. Can the panel comment on effective approaches and examples of universities addressing connectivity? It appears challenging to turn the theoretical into practical activities. So, Karin.
My quick response would be to look at good examples and to share best practice among member universities to really learn from each other, because I agree it's difficult to really pinpoint connectivity as such, but it's part of both transformation and quality, I would say, and everything else we do at universities.
So maybe we should put that, Helena, on our list of things to do. Maybe we could really proactively kind of promote in some form this kind of exchange and sharing of at least some of the subsections of connectivity, some connections, let's say.
Yeah.
Philip, would you like to add something?
Yes, maybe. I think we have at the moment some kind of momentum to develop connectivity, because first there is a demand from students and teachers to develop more hybrid solution for teaching, and this helps to develop some tools together with different teachers from different faculties or different universities. And the second point is the development of European University Alliance that gives us an opportunity and a support, a financial support, to develop some kind of activity together. And one of these activity could be the teaching activity. We don't say, in fact, that research has to be disregarded with respect to teaching. We say that it's very important to keep research and teaching missions at the same level, but there is an opportunity to develop this together with different countries, different universities, in the frame of a University Alliance, I think.
Thank you. Helena, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, just connectivity, like all of the topics that we list in the learning and teaching agenda, is of course a very, very complex topic. And I think some topics might be maybe a little bit more easily implemented, meaning that there is already maybe a little bit more historical experience in implementing it. I just popped into the chat a link to a report which talks about the maybe often overlooked subtopics of connectivity, such as collaborative teaching practices. Some countries might have a little bit more experience with that, whereas it's just upcoming in other countries, in other institutions. But particularly in the context of the COVID pandemic, when we were all online, entirely new opportunities of connecting with each other and collaborating with each other across countries really appeared. And this report, which was written in the context of the pandemic and a project on the digitalization of learning and teaching, looks into specific institutional practices for collaborative teaching. So there might be some interesting real life examples there. But as I said, there are many other ways of interpreting connected learning and teaching. The alliances offer some lessons learned, joint programs offer some lessons learned and many challenges. And we can also go down to the specific pedagogical level of how to connect students and connect with students as partners in co-creation. But there are lots of interesting practices out there, and we at EUA really try to break it down to subtopics and bring up good practice examples to share with others. So I hope that this report can be a start, and we can certainly look for more topics to cover in practice.
Good. Thank you very much. I think it was just because of the clarity of all the input, but there are no other questions for the moment. So I think we can just move forward. So thank you, Sean, for being the one to promote a little bit more discussion. And of course, anytime, if anybody of you has any questions, you have the materials, of course, in CVent, but you can also just write to us at EUA and we'll be there for you as well. So then I would just like to thank everybody. Thank Philip, Karin, Nora, and Helene. And we are ready then to just give the last information and considerations for the closing. So I would like to remind you, as we said earlier, that we have, let me just not go there yet. So we will send you an email with a link to a feedback survey. So what we of course always like very much is to get some feedback. Where did we do good and where we can do a bit differently next time. So please do take a minute to respond to that when you receive it. You will also receive the slides and a link to the recording in the same email. So feel free to share with anybody who might be interested in your context or beyond. The agenda itself, if you didn't access it with the QR code or with the link, you can always find it on the EUA website in any case. So please do have a look when you wish. And then we have also a little kind of commercial break here. Just like to let you know that there are other couple of webinars coming up still this month. So tomorrow one and the next week another one. Tomorrow's webinar is on making sustainability reporting a strategic asset for universities. It's part of EUA's Spotlight on Sustainability in our sustainability year and part of the series. So if that is up your alley, you can still register for that and join the webinar tomorrow. And then on Monday next week, towards a holistic reform, exploring EUA's key principles for attractive and sustainable academic careers, where we explore really kind of the key recommendations created by an EUA task and finish group on academic careers that particularly consider also the element of learning and teaching. So you're most welcome to join any of the two or both of these webinars, or let a colleague who might be interested know. Those are obviously free of charge for all our members. So thank you very much for joining. And for once, a webinar is not running over time. So I will wish you all a very nice afternoon. And also we will, if somebody can from the colleagues, to copy the links. There it is, Tanya, thank you very much. So the links are also now in the chat that you can find the additional webinars there. So we'll keep the chat open still for a minute so you can access those links. Thank you all, and indeed have a very nice week. And for those who celebrate, a happy midsummer at the end of this week as well. Bye-bye.